Chris Mackowski of Emerging Civil War for the American Battlefield Trust. Gary Edelman behind the camera. I'm going to do my best to move my arms in Gary fashion so that you continue to be engaged and entertained. I am delighted to be here at Chickamauga, at the Chickamauga and Chattanooga National Military Park. Right behind the camera in front of me is Jays Mill Road, and behind the camera and behind our super awesome special guest Jim Ogden is the Reed's Bridge Road, and we're going to take a look at that because we've talked about the river crossings as the armies have the first engagements on the 18th, and now we're going to see the importance of those initial opening engagements as they lead to and spill into an unexpected Battle of Chickamauga. As Jim's going to mention, this is not the battle these armies think they're going to fight, but suddenly they're going to find themselves in an unexpected situation. To talk about that, let me bring on my good friend Jim Ogden from the National Park Service. And Jim, tell us, how does this battle sort of turn into something they don't expect?
Well, on the afternoon of the 18th of September, Robert H.C. Minty fighting at Reed's Bridge, which as you look there beyond me on Reed's Bridge Road, if you go 3/8 of a mile to the east, you will come to Reed's Bridge over West Chickamauga Creek. Minty has been calling for reinforcements, and finally that afternoon, reinforcements are sent to him from some of Gordon Granger's Reserve Corps troops up at Rossville to the north. And that column, led by the brigade commanded by Dan McCook, will march south on the Lafayette Road and turn eastward towards Reed's Bridge, but they don't arrive until after Minty has been pushed across the creek at Reed's Bridge and has broken contact and gone to the rear, and the Confederates who had crossed at Reed's Bridge turn and move south on Jays Mill Road. And that night at dark, Dan McCook's brigade of Illinois and Ohio soldiers will arrive along Reed's Bridge Road just a little bit to the west of here. They'll they'll capture stragglers from the rear of that Confederate column, including most of the band of McNair's brigade, and from that Dan McCook will get the idea that there is a lone Confederate brigade out here. And overnight, a very nervous night for McCook and his men, they capture more Confederates, and early that morning, Dan McCook decides he's going to try to burn Reed's Bridge. He sends the 69th Ohio, which is attached to his brigade at that time, he sends them out to Reed's Bridge. They reach Reed's Bridge, kindle fires on the bridge itself, but just then some Confederates appear on the other side, and the 69th Ohio men pull back from Reed's Bridge and return to Dan McCook's men, who are now engaged with some of Nathan Bedford Forrest's cavalry, which has come up from the south to investigate some skirmishing that had occurred during the night. And now there is an intensifying skirmish fight going on in the woods here in the area of a portable steam sawmill, Jays Mill, which was in the south end of this field. We'll walk down in a few minutes and take a look at where it sat and its water source. But Forrest's men have come up from the south, and now they are engaging McCook's men when McCook receives orders to withdraw back to the west, back towards Rossville. The 69th Ohio had reported to him that they had burned the bridge, and as McCook's men march out to the Lafayette Road, they meet George Thomas, who has marched with his part of his corps, Baird's and Brannan's divisions, overnight to Kelly Field, and Dan McCook reports to George Thomas that there is a lone Confederate brigade out to the east near Reed's Bridge, and that Reed's Bridge has been burned behind them and that they can be captured. And George Thomas, despite having marched all night with part of his division, George Thomas decides he's going to try to capture that lone brigade and sends John Brannan's division out eastward, marching Ferdinand Vanderveer's and John Cruxton's brigades up front, with John Connell's brigade following in support in the rear, moves them eastward through the woods towards Reed's Bridge. Forrest, who had had that contact with McCook But McCook, having disappeared, Forrest now is trying to figure out where the Confederates have gone. And with Forrest himself and his staff right around the mill, as some of Forrest's men are filling their canteens at the small spring that supplied the water for the portable sawmill, Forrest sends a patrol into the woods to the west of where we are right now, and that patrol will make contact with Cruxton's advancing men, and they receive a volley from those Indianans and Kentuckians of Cruxton's brigade, and come spilling out of the woods, some of Forrest's cavalrymen shouting, "Get, boys, the woods is full of Yanks." Forrest will dismount the rest of Davidson's brigade and send them into action, and a growing fight at a place not where Bragg wanted the battle to begin. He still thought that the Union left flank would be down at Lee and Gordon's Mill, failing to anticipate that Rosecrans might react by shifting troops to the north overnight, particularly since it had taken so long to cross the creek the day before. Now a very different battle begins to unfold here in the woods just to the west of where we are at Jay's Mill.
One of the things I really like about this scene, and we're going to head down here to take a look at the old mill site here in just a second. One of the things I really like about this site is now we're starting to see that escalation as things start to build up. And we've got a fighting McCook on the scene. We've got Nathan Bedford Forrest on the scene. Not yet the Rock of Chickamauga, but soon to be, is heading onto the scene. And so now we're starting to see some of these personalities that we're familiar with, some of these units that we're familiar with, starting to build. We've got Forrest going into a situation where he's trying to develop a skirmish that he's not even sure what he's up to. We've got a supposed single lone Confederate brigade out here. So there's lots of mystery and uncertainty in these dark woods. We've got a bridge that's supposed to be burned that is not. And so all of these elements combine to create a situation on the field that no one is certain of what they're walking into. And as a result of that, Jim, I'm going to ask you here real quick, as a result of that, as elements come onto this field, they don't know really where they're coming from, what they're heading toward, what to expect, or where to go.
Right, and this fight is beginning to unfold in some very dense terrain, some heavy forest. Now, the understory at the time was very open. In fact, the area here that we have done a little clearing in suggests that openness of the understory, where you could see 150 or 200 yards down through the woods. That's pretty good visibility for an individual soldier, but it is not at all good visibility for a leader up that chain of command, trying to command these much larger formations. And this is a battle where almost literally that phrase of march to the sound of the guns is true, because the one thing that leaders really have to guide on is where did it sound like the fighting at that moment was the loudest. And if indeed that is the loudest sound at the time, that must be the most important sound. It's often not, but that is the case with many of these units as they go into action. They are literally marching to the sound of the guns.
So Jim, when we talk about the terrain here at Chickamauga, does it play tricks on your ear where the sound's coming from? And what does this terrain look like today versus what it looked like back then?
Yeah, I don't know. I don't really get the sense from any of the accounts that the terrain played any tricks with the sound. Except from the perspective that many of the participants said this battle seemed to be louder, probably because the overhead forest cover is trapping and holding that sound in, and so it's more intense for those participants. But it is still difficult to judge exactly where you were going when you were just moving through woods where at most you can see 150 or 200 yards, but that visibility is reduced when the overhead forest cover traps and holds the smoke in. As I said, the understory here was thin enough from the open range grazing that you could see 150 or 200 yards down through the woods, but that visibility quickly went away when the smoke of battle was trapped by that overhead forest cover. Now, otherwise, the pattern of fields and forest on much of the Chickamauga Battlefield Park today is pretty close to what it was at the time of the battle in certainly the core center area of the battlefield. There's some places like Alexander's Bridge where large fields are now grown up. And this field here at Jay's Mill is too small, but in general on the core of the battlefield, the pattern of fields and forest is pretty close to what it was at the time.
Now Jim's going to show us the site of the original mill. I'm going to give him a chance to do that. While he gets into position, I'm going to bring on our good friend, Dr. Anthony Hodges, and I spent so much time practicing the name of the park, Chickamauga and Chattanooga National Military Park, that I forgot to practice Tennessee Battlefield Preservation Association.
Tennessee Civil War Preservation Association.
See, there we go.
TCWPA.org. Jim mentioned open range grazing. I just simply want to elaborate a little bit on that. This battlefield was mainly covered with small subsistence farms. The Gordon Lee Mansion that we saw earlier is the exception, not the rule. In these small subsistence farms, the livestock runs wild and you fence your crops in. And that's one of the reasons why there is so little undergrowth in these old growth forests that we have here, or had here at Chickamauga at the time of the battle.
Now, certainly one of the factors that's also going to play a role in the terrain here is the fact that there is a sawmill. And I'm sure that this is an active area where they're doing some timbering. Jim, tell us about that.
Well, that is certainly possible. In fact, part of this field, this eastern portion of the field, is described by participants as having stumps and head-high brush in it, suggesting that there had been timbering going on here. Now, where there was probably active timbering going on is about a mile down Brotherton Road at the Brock Farm, where there are felled trees or treetops, and some Confederates in the fighting later on the 19th will say that the Federals had constructed log works or log barricades. The Federals hadn't. The Confederates just simply pushed Union troops back into an area where trees had been cut, probably for saw logs for this sawmill. Now, the sawmill is just a portable sawmill. It's a boiler, a steam engine boiler, an engine, and then the sawmill itself. It wasn't a very elaborate structure. What was really important, though, was you needed water for the boiler. If you've ever been around a steam locomotive, you know those things leak water a lot, and that's why those tenders have big tanks of water on them. Well, here at this drainage, there is a spring for the boiler, and here's an opportunity to get wet.
All right, we're going to try to do some stunt camera work here. Oh, look at that. There he goes. Whoa.
Let the record show that was only like 1 foot across.
But over here in the vegetation, in the post-Civil War period, in the Park Commission period, this spring head has been framed up in limestone blocks to make capturing water easier. And again, with the heavy rain we've had recently, there actually is water flowing out of this spring, and this basin is now full for right now. But this spring, this source of water, is the reason why the sawmill was located at this particular point. Additionally, just 6 miles to the east down Reed's Bridge Road, admittedly over 2 ridge lines, but there is the Western and Atlantic Railroad, which could be a customer for the timber cut here, but also transportation for whatever is produced by this sawmill. And the Confederate Army was buying a lot of planks for the frame hospitals they were building in Chattanooga and at Tunnel Hill and Dalton, and other potential engineering operations as well. So.
Okay, good. Jim, we're going to end it here unless anybody has anything to add, but I do have one more question for you. So, let me get a foot on the spring foundation here. You've set up an unexpected battle in an unexpected place, and we're going to now travel to another place on the battlefield where things will have really heated up by then. But could you give us a little teaser, sort of preview? Who's starting to move at this point? What divisions, at least, are starting to move? I have the impression that Claiborne's still kind of way off in the distance, and you've got Cheatham coming up, but before that, you've got Stewart, you've got others coming up a little closer.
Right. As Forrest realizes that he's dealing with a large body of Union infantry, Forrest will send for reinforcements, and he will be given by Bragg and Confederate Reserve Corps Commander William Henry Talbot Shot Pouch Walker a brigade from Walker's Reserve Corps, Wilson's Georgia Brigade, bring them up. He then takes, without asking anybody, another one of Walker's brigades, Matthew Ector's mixed Texas, North Carolina, Alabama, Mississippi, North Carolina brigade, brings them up and throws them into action. And soon more of Walker's troops will be sent up here as well. And then Cheatham's division is marched in this direction. And so this growing fight, but a fight that Bragg still does not think is any indication of the main location of the Union Army. Bragg still thinking the Union left flank must be at Lee and Gordon's Mill, but now as each of these successive Confederate brigades and divisions comes into action, the battle begins to flow southwestward from here at Jay's Mill on that morning of September the 19th. And that very different Battle of Chickamauga has begun to unfold and grow in size, and more troops are literally marching to the sound of the guns, and we'll join those troops as they make their attack at our next stop.
More news at 11. Okay, so thank you all. Thanks, Jim. Thanks, Anthony. Thanks, Chris behind the camera. We really appreciate you joining us today. Make sure you share this with your friends, and make sure you get inspired even more at battlefields.org. Thank you for watching.